Welcome to the Friday noon lecture series, Impact of New Information Resources, Multimedia and Networks, sponsored by the School of Library and Information Studies here at Berkeley. I'd like to thank the Library School at San Jose State, which for the remainder of the semester will be helping us to fund some of our speakers. San Jose State will be taking tapes and hopefully eventually video feeds of these lectures to San Jose, and then they're going to be offering them up on a multimedia distance learning server that they're developing. Just a couple of notes for the next few weeks. We're going to be here again on November 4th, which I believe is 2 weeks from today. Ben Davis from Project Athena and Project CESI at MIT is going to be here. He's probably the leading, or probably the first multimedia developer on the scene in the United States. He's an excellent speaker. He's been doing multimedia educational materials at MIT for almost 10 years. So he'll be talking November 4th on aspects of timing in multimedia databases. On November 18th, tentatively, we will have Steve Dietz, who's Director of Publications at the Smithsonian National Museum of American Art. And he's going to be talking about some of the images and information about the Smithsonian that they've mounted on various online servers such as America Online, and will be mounting on the internet. And then for the last lecture of this semester on December 2nd, we'll have Doug Rushkoff, who's author of Siberia, Life in the Trenches of Hyperspace. He'll be talking about that and his more recent work. Today, I'm really happy to have Alison Druin here. I actually visited Alison in her lab in NYU's Multimedia Research Lab last week in New York. And she showed me some very interesting kind of projects she's been working on. When she was a student at MIT's Media Lab, she developed Newbie, a 5-foot computer Muppet creature for children that I actually got to sit in Newbie's lap last week. Kind of very, very interesting, and I assume she's going to be showing you some of Newbie. She's collaborating with Cynthia Solomon on a book and a CD-ROM based on their teaching experiences titled Designing Multimedia Environments for Children. And her research lab has recently received a very large allocation in the millions of dollars, I guess, from the state of New York to develop multimedia training tools and a multimedia instructional program primarily aimed at the publishing industry in New York and getting them to retool for multimedia. And hopefully you can get her to talk about that in the question period afterwards. Alison? Should form.
Okay, where's the slide? I left the slide thing over there. Could you hand that? Thanks. Technology, you gotta love it. Okay. Let's go forward. Okay. All right, as Howard said, I'm going to talk to you about immersive environments. The long explanation of what immersive environments are, a physical approach to the multimedia experience. Actually, the short explanation is that it's basically taking multimedia out of the box. I believe, and I have been believing this for the last 10 years, that multimedia does not mean a mouse, a keyboard, and a CD-ROM. In fact, that means it's a computer. It doesn't mean it's a multimedia experience. And so when I say this to my Courant Institute of Mathematical Sciences, where I am now where I'm now directing a program, they all look at me and say, oh God, where did we find her? But anyway, why do I believe this? I believe this because basically when you go up to a computer, when you actually interface with a computer, what's the first thing that you interface with? You actually interface with an environment from the moment you see it to the moment you actually touch it till finally the moment you actually interact with it. And because of that, I've come to believe that computer environments can be stuffed animals, they can be Lego parts, and they can be whole rooms. And actually at the NYU Media Research Laboratory, we've begun to define what these whole types of rooms can be. And actually, it's interesting. You know, some people call this ubiquitous computing. Some people call it computer-augmented environments, virtual reality, whatever. I don't care what you call it. Here's my definition, which is a little blurry. Let's try and focus that. Oh, there you go. Here's my definition of immersive environments. Room-size environments that are responsive to your movement, your touch, to your voice, and so on. And what do you get out of that room? Well, you get out of that room everything that you might normally get out of a box, but it's in the whole room. So it's video, it's sound, it's music, and environmental controls, and so on. Now, is this revolutionary? No. In fact, this isn't new. Since the 1960s, people have been creating happenings. They've been creating media rooms. I mean, this is not new, okay? I can't patent this. I don't want to. But what's very important is to take a look at the past. And so for a moment, I'm going to take you through the past of what I call immersive environments. Actually, my roots come from the MIT Media Lab, and so I've been directly influenced by what's gone on at MIT for years. And actually, many of you may have heard about the first, I believe, the first immersive environment, the media room at MIT, where essentially you sat in this chair and you said, put that on the screen over there. And so it's been nicknamed, put that there, that environment. However, the funny thing is, if you read all the literature on this environment, you might think, oh my God, this is amazing. All they did was point and things moved. Well, what you didn't realize until you started really reading the papers is that they were wearing headsets, they were wearing these things that you would scare children away from with these hands. I mean, it was really, really scary. So that was 1970-something or other, okay? Actually, a few years ago, Larry Friedlander, as well as Gloriana Davenport from the MIT Media Lab, spearheaded actually something which they called interactive theater or immersive environments themselves. And this was about three or so years ago. Actually, Larry came here and spoke, I believe, last year, and he may have already talked about some of this work. But it was the first instantiation where I thought, oh, wait, what I've been thinking about could be in a whole room, not necessarily just one particular object. Now, if you go back a bit, immersive environments or alternative environments, computational environments, input and output, have actually mostly been seen with having to do with kids. And that's sort of where I landed, because it's very interesting. You don't have to be serious when you make things for kids. They'll let you be creative. So that's why I got into this kids stuff, because if you would try and say, I'm going to make a whole room for business people, they'll all laugh at you, okay? So we started with kids. And so I went back to some of the work that Seymour Papard's group had been doing in the 60s. This is a mechanical turtle. I don't know how many of you know about Seymour Papard's work with kids. Okay, that many. Basically, Seymour started a group out of the AI lab at MIT with Marvin Minsky back in the 50s, 60s, thereabout. And he started thinking about, with a whole bunch of people, what could kids do and how do kids think? And if you think about how you think, then you also will learn about how to create thinking computers. And so his work, he sort of fell into this stuff with kids and so on in sort of that way. And his group of people created a turtle. They gave kids the ability to manipulate, using a computer language called Logo, this mechanical thing. And it could draw, and it could move around. And actually, if we focus that so that you don't die, whoops, wrong way. There you go. They even created an interface that was a button box. Actually, Margaret Minsky from Atari Research, that was also associated with the AI lab, this is her interface to this computer. And it's exciting because this was one of the first times that we gave people a chance, especially kids, a chance to interact in an alternative way, not with a keyboard. Mice didn't really exist back then. This was the big animal of the day was the turtle. So anyway, where are they now? They use Legos, okay? They are now working with something called Lego Logo. They understood the importance of what they call concrete objects to think with. And so if you talk about programming and you talk about how do you draw something on the screen, if you have them control something that's physical and they move left, move right, it's amazing. The kids will get it. Okay, I'm a dyslexic person, and boy, do I have a hard time figuring out which way on the screen I'm supposed to draw. It's horrible. This is great. I'm controlling robotic pieces, robotic Lego pieces, with a Logo programming language. Now, it's very interesting. This is not the whole room. This is just a teeny piece of it. And how do they interface with this? Still, unfortunately, the same way that most people interface with their computers, through a keyboard and mouse and so on. But it's a very exciting thing in terms of an output. Now, this is also another research project that came out of MIT. Actually, I was associated with a group called the Vivarium, the Apple Vivarium group, and our advisor was Marvin Minsky. And Marvin used to say that the biggest waste of space in the entire lab, in the entire MIT lab, was this giant atrium, this giant IMP atrium. And he said, I can't believe we can't even do any research in this giant hole. And so the next day, all of us were flying blimps around, trying to make these blimps be fish. And so very reminiscent of what Seymour Pappert's group did with the mechanical turtle, we were doing with this blimp fish and giving it behaviors and so on. The idea behind the project was to teach kids about animal behavior in new multimedia expressions, if you will. Now, what eventually became my thesis, oh wow, it's very furry. Okay, now, here we go. Oh, this is terrible, wait. There, okay. That's Newbie, short for New Beast. And Newbie was, the idea behind Newbie was that throw away the keyboard, throw away the mouse, what happens when you do that? And how can you integrate that thing we call a screen from being on our desktop to putting it in something we know? This, as far as I know, was the first time somebody was trying to create, end quotes, an immersive experience with physical, familiar objects that we know of. Okay? I worked with folks from Henson. I worked with people from Disney. Apple just threw tons of money at this, and it was bizarre. I couldn't understand why. But what was so exciting about the whole thing is that we made this thing, and when we compared, we took the computer out of its belly, and we just stuck it on a table, and we compared the kids using the software of Newbie versus the whole Newbie experience, okay? The kids, we couldn't peel them off that thing. However, after about 10, 15 minutes, they got bored. They got bored of using the software. What was it that they were doing? They squeezed the different parts on Newbie, and they pop up on the screen in its belly. You could hear a sound associated with the part, and you created these little animals to animate. Actually, I have a videotape of that, so that's the first video clip if you want to do that. And what was actually rather interesting is that what we learned about this whole sort of environment thing was that oh, that's pretty. we need some sound, but okay. So what we learned about is that large environments like this, or large beasts like this, they ask kids to work together. They don't take kids out of their environment and just interact with one thing sitting on a table. They're working together because they don't have a choice. One kid can't see the screen while he's pressing on different parts. Now this was back in '87. This was before multimedia was one word. This was before people did HyperCard, okay? This was actually, Atkinson took a look at some of the stuff we were doing with this. This was before Director ruled. This was, what was this? I don't know. Yeah, it was '87, so it was a while ago. Okay, you can shut the clip. Now from there, we thought, well, not every kid is going to be able to put Newbie in his backyard. So what to do? Well, we downsized, and so we actually made a laptop Newbie, UFR. He's UFR, why? Because he's UFR friendly. Anyway, and boo, I know. Anyway, his little headpiece was a joystick, and he had little switches all over the place, and in his underbelly was where the keyboard and mouse interface was, and essentially, you interfaced with a Macintosh minus the keyboard and mouse. You just plug this little boy in. Oh, that's pretty. There you go. So we played around with UFR. Oh, no, I'm also going rewind. Wait. We also made objects. Oh, come back. Okay, wait. Don't you love technology? It's great. All right, wait. Here we go. We also made objects that kids could relate to, physical objects that also related to what they were doing on the screen. So we made a globe, and if you press the various parts of the globe, it would take you to different places. So this one, it would go to London, and then you'd hear cheerio old chap and all that stuff. We also made immersive books where you touch different parts on a physical book, and it changed what was on the screen in the animation and so on. It's interesting because when you bring a part of a child's familiar physical world into the computational one, it's amazing. You don't have to teach them how to do anything. They just do it. This was truly an immersive environment. This was clothes. There were switches in the clothes. And basically, child learned about parts of his body by pressing the different switches in the various sensors, various areas. Was not thrilled about this. He did not like the clothing design of that. That was not a very good one. But anyway, and so on the screen there was a dress me, and they learned about this and so on. So anyway, where did we go from there? Basically, we realized that the richness of the experience that we had created with Newbie could not be matched with what we were doing with smaller things. And so it was around 1991, 1992 that I met Professor Ken Perlin and Professor Richard Wallace, both of NYU's Courant Institute of Mathematical Sciences. Ken is an amazing computer graphics professor and hacker, and many of you may know him from SIGGRAPH. And Richard Wallace is an amazing robotics professor doing miniaturized robotics. And so together with their interests and mine, we collaborated to create room-size environments. And actually, at this point, why don't I show the videotape? What you're about to see is our first collaboration, which actually spawned the Media Research Laboratory. It was successful enough so that we had 300 people go through this environment in 2.5 days.
In May of 1993, NYU's Courant Institute of Mathematical Sciences and Tisch School of the Arts established a collaborative research experiment in physical multimedia. Imagine a room that responds to your touch. Lights change, video appears, sounds can be heard, all based on your interaction with the environment. This is all possible when you create an immersive environment.
The person who created the installation is guiding you through changing lights and sounds that are localized from someplace, and you in turn are saying what your preferences are or what you're interested in or where you'd like the story to go by the objects you pick up, by the things you press, by where you step.
Honey, the babysitter's here. Oh, fine. Now we can go out to the play.
Oh, great, you're here. Okay, we'll be home by 9, and just make sure that Junior's asleep by the time we get back, okay?
Have fun.
You walk into a room and it becomes very clear that you are a babysitter and the parents have left you in charge of their baby. They're going to come back at 9. You have to stop the baby from crying.
Get the phone again?
Various appliances start going on, and your goal, which you quickly realize is your goal, is to turn the appliances off. Because every time they turn on, the baby starts to cry.
Okay, I think that's it.
If you successfully complete the goal and you turn off all the appliances as they turn on, then the parents come back at the end and they're very happy and they pay you. If you don't, then they scold you and you failed.
Why is Junior still crying?
You're a bad babysitter.
The way the room was set up was with a switch and a spotlight on every appliance, the radio, the TV, telephone, etc., which were all wired to our custom-built I/O device called the rig. For example, the floor switch as you walk in triggers a message to the Macintosh from the rig. Then, the Mac plays a projected video clip of the parents who come out and greet you. Part of the reason that I'm a programmer
Okay, you can kill
is because I like to control reality.
No, all the rest of this.
This was that times 3.
Okay, turn that back on. Okay, so as you can see, it was quite an amusing experiment, and basically that was one example of 3 environments that we actually created during that time period. Our goals in terms of this kind of research is actually threefold. Many people today are trying to empower our physical surroundings. They're trying to make things basically better with computational power in our physical surroundings. However, we're also concentrating on two other ways. We're concentrating on new authoring technologies. Why? Because quite honestly, whatever we as researchers create in a lab cannot be as good as when we hand it to theater people, film people, teachers, kids, and ask them to create their own environments. And so we want to create the Macromind director of physical immersive environments, because that's when these environments will be powerful and exciting environments. We also realize that because we're asking a whole bunch of people to work together that wouldn't normally even speak to each other and put them in a room together and make them work together, we realize there's also a lot of research in how do you collaborate. Everyone's paying lip service to it, but we're actually having to do it. And quite honestly, we're going through therapy dealing with it. And it's important to understand. It's not one researcher behind one computer anymore. Okay, the results of the initial work that we did was very interesting. We had generally a positive response. I mean, people came through, they came out of the woodwork. I mean, in New York, let's face it, New York's probably a year and a half behind all of you. You're all jaded. You know about all this already. But New York was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And basically, about 14% of those people, though, got a little confused. We surveyed people, we videoed people, and so on. And one person gave us a very interesting comment. They said, you know, my mom always told me, do not touch. So I didn't, and so I didn't know what to do. And so it was very interesting. Those people that are not used to playing, okay, didn't fare very well in these environments. But so be it. Anyway, 12% of the people, a good chunk of people compared it to what they already knew. Museums, happenings from the 60s, various different LSD trips, Disneyland, so on. And it was actually, it was rather interesting for us to see that. Okay, results in terms of the authoring technologies is that we've started creating new physical sort of hardware interfaces as well as software interfaces. We've got a very long way to go because basically the question is, what do you want to do with a room? And the answer is, I have no idea until I can do it. So it's a chicken and the egg, and we're trying to figure out what kinds of technologies are important for people to have their hands on. And finally, we're also analyzing how people are working together and how are theater people adding to what computer people know and robotics people collaborating with computer graphics people and so on. It's a very interesting mix, and actually a few papers will come out of this having to do with the dynamics of team design. Our current research has to do with music. Okay, actually, what we learned from our initial collaboration with film students is that we created basically linear interactive books, if you will, of the rooms. Okay, and it's very similar to what's going on with commercial multimedia CD-ROMs. Okay, essentially everyone's just sort of taking what they knew from paper and translating it into interactive CDs. Great, wonderful. So basically our film students did the same thing. They basically translated what they knew, which is to be a film or a story, and translated it into how to lead people through a room. Well, what we're trying to do now is understand how do you deal with something that's not leading people through, that's more sort of I don't know, an ambient nature and so on. And what we've done is we've actually set aside, gosh, a very expensive section of real estate for New York to be our immersive environment research area because you need space, and in New York that's not exactly something we have a lot of. But anyway, what we've done is we're working on an environment now that's a music environment. Essentially, we're working with music technology students as well as artists and our own computer science and robotics students, and creating a place where you can actually play music and understand the music by playing with physical objects that may represent ideas about music. So if I turn a mask or uncover something behind a mask, I'm uncovering more information about the music. If I touch different textures in this triangle, I can change the texture of the music. And if I walk upstairs, I can increase the volume of the music. So it's the idea is how do you create three-dimensional icons that mean something to people. Some people this is totally, doesn't mean anything to, and some people does. Actually, let me play 2 minutes of a videotape of stuff for 1 second. The interesting thing about the music, this music experiment, is that there's actually three colors, or three groups of colors of objects. Future directions of things. Actually, there's many more questions having to do with this stuff than there are answers. Quite honestly, I have no idea the depth of information that is possible in a room. We know we're beginning to understand how much information could be put behind a screen. But where does information live in a room? It's a very, very hard question. And also, how do you create these environments that are rich physical experiences, experiences that match our day-to-day physical experiences? Also, the question is linear versus nonlinear. What is, do you tell stories in these rooms, or are they just plain rooms that you interact with and they give you information? And certainly, you have to tell people how to interact with this room, okay? Give people some kind of context so that they're just not walking in and all of a sudden they lean on something and some sound comes out of nowhere. You've got to give them some kind of situate them, if you will. And certainly, you want more than one person to go through your immersive experience at a time, because otherwise, guess what? You might as well be behind, a computer screen. You could be wearing goggles, what have you. The exciting thing about being in rooms is that there's a whole lot of people that join you in a room. And so how can you have this kind of experience? My favorite, actually, commercial application to date of immersive environments in New York City is the city toilets, the public toilets. This is a project that just started, okay, and it's actually an immersive environment. It's an immersive toilet. It's right outside of the Brooklyn Bridge. And what do I mean by that? Well, basically, there are sensors to wash your hands. So you put your hands underneath the soap, and soap comes out. You put your hand underneath the water, and then hand underneath the dryer. There are different sensors to flush but actually what's really interesting is that this all can be automatic as well. But if you're disabled, you can stick a second key in, and they'll let you stay in that room for 40 minutes as opposed to 20 before the doors automatically open. And so it's a very exciting thing. You should have seen me taking pictures of this with my graduate assistants. Anyway, and what's so exciting is that you don't have to worry about flushing or cleaning or anything else. So you sit on the toilet, you get up, and it flushes by itself. You walk out, and all the doors go, they close, and all of a sudden you hear all this water spritzing all over the place, and it's disinfecting itself. So this is the most amazing immersive environment. And actually, the guy was fixing it while I was there, while I was trying to take pictures, and actually, and would you believe all of this technology for a toilet? Okay, so what I say to you today is that, basically, today it's our public toilets, and tomorrow it can be our public schools, our public theaters, anything, okay? And so if we can do this with toilets, I believe we can certainly do this with anything. Thank you. Okay, are there any questions? brought down the light. And imagine